look forward to presenting them with you and how we're addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm also a student here at Morehouse College.
That's awesome. Nice to meet you.
You as well.
I can go. My name is Anjali Sinduvali. I'm a fourth-year undergraduate student at the University of Georgia studying finance and accounting. And I'm the president of Triple Impact Consulting, which is a pro bono consulting organization that works with companies in Athens, Georgia, as well as the Atlanta area. We work directly with B Local Georgia and a lot of B Corp companies there, as well as the University of Georgia Small Business Center. And I'm excited to share our progress and our projects from being a first-year organization with you guys today.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
I guess that leaves me. My name is Hannah Crumpton. I'm an undergraduate student here at Coastal Carolina University. I'm majoring in intelligence and national security studies, and I'm here because I have published in the peer-reviewed journal, The Intelligence Review, for my work on food security and its impacts because of COVID-19.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Hannah.
I can turn on my video and just go for a second.
Yeah, that's
before I have to
fine.
turn it back off again, but I am Jenny Hirsch, and I am faculty at Georgia Tech and the director of one of the units that started RCE Greater Atlanta called Serve, Learn, Sustain at Georgia Tech. So it's good to see everybody. I have one quick question. Is everybody who is at like Morehouse and UGA, everyone who's at the Georgia universities is engaged in RCE Greater Atlanta? Is that true? Or is that not correct?
I'm unsure of that question. I know there's 4 of us in here from Coastal Carolina University right now.
So like the other, those of you who just introduced yourselves from UGA and Morehouse, are you guys here through RCE Greater Atlanta, or did you get here some other way?
There was a panelist request that was sent to the AUC community for some additional panelists.
Oh, great.
From that point, I was connected by a professor of mine. So that's how I got connected. But I've heard of the RISE program in other countries and other efforts as well.
Well, we'll have to tell you about RCE Greater Atlanta afterwards, try and rope you into that.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here for me as well. I was connected by the UGA Office of Sustainability, but I would love to learn more about RCE Atlanta.
Great.
Awesome. And Mike, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey guys, my name is Michael Fuller. I'm a senior at Coastal Carolina. I'm currently interning with the United Nations Georgetown RISE group, and I'm currently doing COVID vaccination clinics with Thailand's Health. And
Yeah, you'll get more into that in a minute. And I'm Michelle Zarenda. I'm a PhD student, 3rd year at Coastal Carolina University in educational leadership, but I'm also working directly with sustainability and Dr. Pamela Martin with our Georgetown RISE program. And I've been supervising our interns. And so our undergraduates are running the show. I'm just here for assistance if I'm needed. And so I'm going to turn it over to Derek, and if you guys need me, I'm here and I'm recording and I'm the timekeeper.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys once again for coming out. I'm really excited for some of the discussions we're going to have. I wanted to start off by, kind of just giving a quick overview of sustainability from the point of view of a college student in the middle of COVID. About a year ago, COVID-19 really rapidly spread throughout the entire world. And I think I can attest for all of us when we can say that our daily lives were greatly impacted. One of the more interesting things that I had seen, though, following this is the amount of involvement that not only students have directly with the communities, but what the United Nations has been doing in terms of the efforts behind trying to bring us all back together to what it was like prior to this pandemic. So I guess in terms of the first question to all of you, I would just say, what does sustainability encompass, and what's the United Nations role in all of this?
Just to clarify, you were asking kind of for a group conversation on regarding that point.
Right. I guess from
right.
Perspective.
Just collecting thoughts. Okay. Sure. So, is this going to be part of the 3-minute portion, or is this part of the conversational piece?
We could answer this general question first, and then if you
Okay,
want, you guys can each go into your own right after this question, your response.
Okay, yeah, no, it's an
Then
important
Alex,
question.
yeah, if you want to go, then we can, after we respond, you can jump
Understood.
into yours, and then you can each do your 3 minutes
I see.
about what you guys do.
Right, brilliant. Well, Derek, it's a great question, and I definitely would love to extend it to the other panelists here as well. But I definitely would concur that the United Nations has done quite an extent of work to trying to create kind of a unified group, and especially kind of intergenerational, which is something that you brought up in the previous presentation, to kind of have more youth representation. I think it's very important, and I think now is the time to do it. I think that there's a lot of great efforts underway, especially with ESG investments and lots of other ways of trying to align environmental goals to the kind of practical outputs that we expect to see.
Yeah, I would agree. And to jump in and go off of that, I think the UN does a really good job of kind of defining the different SDGs so that you can take the factors of environmental, social, governance, and kind of group those into 17 different areas and categories. And just by that, I think like in the organization that I work with, we always break down, like if we have a goal for a company or business, like which of the SDGs it kind of relates to. So just breaking that down to like a smaller material and going through each one of those metrics and being able to analyze them, whether it's a company, an organization, or like an individual, even what their goal is to align it to the UN. I think it's a really good framework that the youth, especially nowadays, can kind of memorize, keep in their minds, and go off of when they're completing projects.
I agree with her. I'm also going to add on to a little bit of that. I also think like the UN is doing a good job with finding like young adults like ourselves that are willing to help and change the environment and help with like generating a future for the generations to come, because at the end of the day, we all want the generations to have good resources and like well access to whatever they can have like we had growing up. And I just think it's going to be a bigger thing in the future when people start realizing what sustainability could do for our communities and economic system and finances.
Yeah, no, I think you guys are right on track with what I was thinking too. Always interesting. I guess we can move it along, and would you guys feel comfortable explaining what it is exactly you guys have done over the course of your time? I can, of course, go first. If anyone else wants to go first, please feel free. But yeah, okay. Let me see if I can screen share to give you guys a little example of what the work we've been doing at good old Georgetown RISE. Okay, can everyone see that all right? All right, so what I've been doing over the course of about, almost a year now, is right when the COVID pandemic hit, I was tasked with creating a dashboard in order to encourage the Georgetown community to have an open dialogue and increase the transparency between the local governance, as well as giving an opportunity for members of the community to not only see what these goals are and what they encompass, but some of the individual merits of each of them. For my time being that this is a phase one thing, it's going to be a multi-year process, and unfortunately I'll be graduating in the next couple of weeks and moving on and passing the torch. I've done my best to collect information and data on which that the next intern can base their research. So I've currently focused on goals 1, 3, 4, 8, 11, and 13, all of which we found some really interesting data, and I think it gives a great perspective to not only the local decision makers and policymakers, but to also the community that wants to see exactly what it is maybe they should be voting on, and to keep them well informed. Especially relating this back to the COVID situation, I think that now there's no better time to engage in a really transparent dialogue and to have a community that's involved in what they think should be done. And I think this is a really good way that we've approached it. I can give you a quick example of some of what it is. So we've created a dashboard, or I've created a dashboard really identifying some of the different indicators, of course, consistent with each of the sustainability development goals. For example, we can look at car accidents in different counties of South Carolina in an effort to actually showcase the differences or what areas we need to focus on. And then we can change it to heart disease as well. The graphs and everything will change with that. Really interesting. And this, of course, has been all backed up by different, so Thailand Health is one of our health organizations that we have in Georgetown County. And I've worked directly with the data that they've collected for different merits in order to showcase this in the best way possible, so that if members of the community want to engage, they not only know that one, it's well informed, but two, it's coming from members of the community as well that are in goal of overall inclusivity of sustainability in daily life. So this project, I'm pretty proud of this. It's been a long time coming. We've had a lot of fun doing it. I've met a lot of really great individuals that have helped me throughout this entire process. And I guess, yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys want to talk about what it is that you've been doing, and let me stop this screen share. I'd be more than happy to kind of discuss and see where we have some similarities and some differences.
So actually, you and I have something in common, Derek, because I'm interning for Thailand's Community Care Network, and I've been working in the COVID vaccination sites for the past 4 months, and just kind of observing and like hearing people's discussions about what they think about the vaccination and like how excited they are for it. It's like, it's inspiring knowing that like you're there helping like these people in ways that you don't even know you're helping them. Like I could just be there, like, you know, setting up paperwork for them to fill out or cleaning stuff around the clinic or registering people. And it's like, they thank you for every little thing you do. And it was a tough time for everyone, but it seems like now that the vaccination has rolled out, that South Carolina is actually one of the leading, Georgetown specifically is one of the cities in South Carolina that's leading all of South Carolina in vaccinations. So that's a plus for Thailand's. But overall, the experience has been really, really fun, exciting, knowledgeable, and I couldn't ask for a better internship.
I think it's incredible, both stories. I think, Michael, it's great that you have gotten that immersion experience too. I think that's really good. And Derek, I'm very interested in the metrics that you're looking at for sure. It seems like it's some good work and you're definitely passing on the torch. So I commend you for that. I was wondering if it was all right if I would be able to share my screen rather briefly. I'd like to kind of demonstrate a couple things of interest if I could get. Okay, cool. Let's see. All right. So the 1M 2030 initiative is an initiative that's done in partnership between the Global Challenges Forum Foundation and the United Nations, specifically United Nations Institute for Training and Research. And as the youth ambassador for the foundation, my goal is generally to try to help empower and develop this initiative, which is to try to empower 1 million youth leaders towards UN Sustainable Goals by 2030. We do this in partnerships with stakeholders and other key kind of initiatives that are kind of throughout different areas. So to give a brief kind of what we've done in terms of our work, I'm not going to go through all the kind of details of the slide, but essentially, Mr. Nikhil Seth, the Assistant Secretary General of UNITAR, wants to kind of provide more training mechanisms for youth that are addressing SDGs from a university level, with projects similar to what Derek has done, or people with an international experience of practitioner work, something that Michael has discussed, and try to kind of provide access through the one. And 1M 2030 initiative is one of those initiatives that is trying to do so. So due to COVID-19, we've had to kind of streamline and go through webinars. So we've released our podcast, which now has featured several youth leaders, which I have below here. So this one was on period poverty. included Amika George, who was recently given a grant by Emma Watson to do work now. And now she has made, with UK law, all public schools now have to have certain access to the materials that are required, for best practices in schools, Nasasa Chinchula as well. We've also did one for Coding with a Cause. This specifically is related to COVID-19 here. Mr. Avi Schiffman, at 17 years old, he created the world's largest coronavirus tracking site, which is used in coordination with the World Health Organization and with other organizations as well. He's a 1M2030 youth ambassador, working very closely with him as well. Some of the continued work that we do now, we're considering some other options, but I think one thing that we're always considering is reaching out to local partners. Being part of the Morehouse community and the Atlanta community, I've taken a lot of interest in hearing more about the work that RISE has done. And I'm hoping to help kind of continue our conversation. This was one thing that we had at the UN headquarters in Geneva before the pandemic. It was a different time period at that time. So thank you very much for the chance to kind of share that detail in our updates. I'm happy to answer any questions as needed.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. I'm actually curious, were you more based as an in-person organization, or were you guys primarily online, prior to COVID?
We were prior to COVID. We actually were a new initiative launched in 2019 of September. So I had just returned from Senegal. I was immersed in Senegal for maybe 8 months with what's called the Global Citizen Year program after high school. So I ended up learning Wolof and connecting with my community and really immersing and trying to understand, not necessarily, like a lot of the higher level applications of kind of the work being complemented by some of the aspects that Michael has been talking about, the practitioner side, like knowing the stakeholder, knowing who you're engaging with, making sure that there aren't challenges from a linguistical standpoint or from a community standpoint when addressing problems. I kind of pitched and presented that to the foundation, which at the time evidently was launching the initiative. So it's relatively rather new, 2019, to answer your question, but we had to flex and adapt like a lot of organizations. So we ended up addressing the COVID-19 pandemic through a series of webinars, which you can find out at 1m2030.org. I definitely think they're worth the time to take a look at if you get the chance, and a couple other things as well.
Oh yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Alexander.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, please, Angela, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't mean to talk over everyone. Sorry. Alexander, that was awesome. I really enjoyed the visual presentation of all the projects you guys are doing, as well as the pre-COVID transition. If you guys don't mind, I will also share my screen really quickly while I'm talking about my organization. Can you guys see the screen? All right, great. Thank you for the confirmation. So like I mentioned, I am president of Triple Impact Consulting. We are a pro bono student-led consulting firm at the University of Georgia. It kind of got started because we saw a need in the Office of Sustainability at Georgia for a lot of students to be involved in client projects. If you guys don't know, UGA is located in Athens, Georgia. It's about an hour from Atlanta. And basically the college students that come in make up a large portion of the population in the city, but there's a lot of poverty inequity once you go past the University of Georgia, and a lot of the smaller local businesses were hit really hard with COVID this coming year, as university students kind of got to see that hand in hand when you like went out on downtown on the streets, kind of see how each of the local businesses were hit, whether that was like with costs or like with having to shut down restaurants, things like that. So I just wanted to kind of go over a few of our spring 2021 clients that we were really happy and proud to be able to work with. And all the project teams are led by about like 4 to 5 students, and it is completely like, it's very entrepreneurial, very student-led, student-based, as well as based with like B corporations and B Lab Georgia. So this semester we had the honor and privilege of working with ArcLab. It's an architecture and design firm that focuses on historic preservation in downtown Athens. Community is a sustainable fashion boutique, sort of like a thrift store with locally made products, with a mission to kind of create and still sustainable clothing as well. The Eco Incubator is another one that is a nonprofit that I think is also related to the UN. I think one of the founders worked a lot with the UN and the SDGs there during her travels abroad. And it is a education incubator to kind of educate people in Athens about sustainability as well as community outreach. Green Link Group is a data analytics, equity mapping, clean energy and technology consulting group that has a modeling tool that's called Athenia, and our members kind of work to do like an equity map for their organization. Cultivo was a little bit of a reach. It was a farm, I think based in Chicago, which a mission of like cultivating next generation farmers, and they grew coffee. So it was a really interesting project that our members got to see like global supply chains and all the way from like farmers to the product that you see in your hand. Surfscape is a wholesale plant nursery, urban design, landscaping type of firm. It was also really interesting because a lot of their products are sold in Atlanta. And our last couple of ones were a pottery studio that was local, as well as a local farm that kind of sells their produce and their flowers at the market in downtown Athens. And these are all really special to us because, like I said, Athens, Georgia is a very, very small city. And these are businesses that students kind of interact with on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. So it's something that we could kind of see the change tangibly after our students work with them. During COVID-19, during these past couple semesters, we've been working with them over Zoom. So that was a little bit of a struggle to come up with times to meet and things like that. But overall, just coming through with the baseline sustainability mapping metric, using the B Corps assessment to kind of map out what the recommendations were, how each business could improve, whether that was like installing a low flow toilet or a solar panel set or creating a policy handbook. I think it was very beneficial to both the students and the community, and had a good impact on just the university because we took a lot of majors that weren't business majors, children who had like no background in consulting, that type of thing, and also got to present to like the middle and high schools here. So that has been really rewarding in the past couple of semesters.
It's brilliant, brilliant work.
It really is wonderful work. I'm intimidated by how well everyone's put together. As I thought I was doing a pretty good project, and then I see you guys, and it's like it's really admirable. And I can't wait for hopefully the next generation of interns to model after this. I mean, we have a couple interns I think in here throughout this entire thing, but I'm really excited to see where this all is going. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else want to share, or is it time for the more question side of this?
Mike, do you want to go over what you do a little bit?
If I might, I wanted to ask Hannah a question. Hannah, I wanted to learn more about the work that you're trying to do, specifically with trying to track food security. The paper in of itself, where was it published and what inspired you to do it? If it's all right if I intervene here.
Thank you, excuse me, for the question. So I track a lot of my information through Feeding America, which has published a lot of the publications recently through 2017, 2018, and 2019, because a lot of this information does take a while to come about and come from many of the census. This paper was actually published here through Coastal called the Intelligence Review. And I can talk a bit more about the program that was published through, but hold on one second, I'm having connection.
Sure, take your time.
I will interject really quickly and say Hannah and I are both intelligence majors at Coastal, which gives us a different perspective in terms of security. A lot of what I looked at was hazard and risk mitigation throughout what I was doing, and I took that perspective to try to inform. I reached out to Brandon Ellis, who's one of the hazard mitigation planners in Georgetown County, and we just kind of had this whole merit from the perspective of, okay, in terms of how are we going to respond to risk reduction of certain things. So in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, a lot of the issues come from either flooding or what it's very common for hurricanes and flooding. So we had to prepare for that. And Hannah, and from her perspective and my understanding of this, looked at this from sort of okay, what's the impact of food security networks, and how would that affect the sustainability efforts for specifically goal number 2, which is no hunger. and the kind of bleed over effect that would have throughout everything. Sorry to jump in, Hannah. Just wanted to...
Well, it's brilliant. I commend you both for that. And Hannah, great work.
Thank you so much. She's still having issues as she's sitting across from me, but but yeah. Well, thank you all for everything that you do. I'm thoroughly impressed. It's such an awesome. I think this whole dialogue is very interesting, just in terms of getting to see what it is that other people are doing in the midst of a pandemic, and to see how it really, although it's difficult, we're still managing quite well, and there's a lot of promise in everything that I think we're doing. Which would kind of lead me to, I guess, the first question, which is, how is COVID directly affect what it is you're doing, and how has sustainability overcome that?
Okay, I'm going to interject. I hope that's okay, because Mike has what he has been doing all semester relates perfectly as an answer to this. So I think that, and I will just say, we asked Mike as of 2 days ago to join the panelists, so he's not as prepared, but he's going to explain, because what he's been doing is awesome.
I unintentionally set you up there.
No, it's good.
I told him to, Mike. I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, I'll just present my PowerPoint then, I guess, except oh wait, what happened? Oh, you're muted.
It's a practice for your final on Monday, so I think you should. But
Yeah.
no, what he's been doing has been directly affecting with COVID, or so. Go ahead.
All right, let me share the screen. Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. Share. All right. All right, cool. You all can see that? So since I'm working with Thailand's Community Care Network, I cover Sustainable Development Goal number 3, which is health and well-being. A little bit of Thailand's Community Care Network. It's a regional and local organization which consists of nurses, health educators, state agencies, local agencies, different kind of healthcare, human service providers such as like psychologists, parenting skills, etc. That was bad. But, pretty much Thailand's improves lives of the low poverty community. They help them with behavioral services. So if their kids are acting up in school, or if the parents don't know exactly where their kid is coming from, they'll have seminars on parenting skills. Usually they'll do like food bank and help with housing. Health and education, they'll give you like education on the COVID vaccination, education on how to find a job. They do low cost or free medication with certain grants they have. They do special cares such as cancer and diabetes, obesity, and they transport the elderly to and from medical appointments. So my biggest project I've been doing is the COVID vaccination. So I've been in the clinic a lot. This is the slide I forgot. So pretty much one of my projects was to make a take-home kit for individuals with who test positive with COVID and can't afford certain essentials. So they give you a COVID packet to give you detail on what COVID is, how you could prevent the spread, a thermometer, some hand sanitizer. In the box, there's a face mask. And right in the corner is to view your heart rate and your pulse. So once the vaccination rolled out, Thailand's opened up 3 clinics. One was in Georgetown. The other one was in Murrells Inlet, and they newly opened up the one in Market Commons. A lot of people had different views on the vaccination. So phase 1 was, I believe it was 60 and above, but right here I have views from adults who are 50 to 80. and 20% of them, said they would just get the vaccination as soon as possible. A lot of them want to wait to see what other people get, or if they get any symptoms from the vaccination, so they hold off. 20% of them weren't sure, and 14% don't want to either get it because of vaccination hesitant, or they're just never received vaccination in their life. I was doing some vaccination censuses, and I came across that South Carolina had the South Carolinians are 34% of the state has at least one dose, and about 21% of South Carolina is fully vaccinated. For Georgetown County, they're first in vaccinations. So they actually lead every single place in South Carolina. Horry County is ranked 4th. In Georgetown County, from April 18th, approximately over 18,000 people were completely vaccinated. And as you can see on here on the map, it shows every single state in the United States and how far they have vaccinated their population. So the pink is 1 dosage and the blue is fully dosed. And as you can see here, since the vaccination process started, that South Carolina has decreased in confirmed cases, whereas California is still on a high rise, New Jersey's at a medium to low, and New York is about 2,000. Certain reactions from just being in the clinic. One guy just said, he's a cancer survivor, but he's excited to get the shot because he could see his family and loved ones again. And, getting the vaccination just helps the community just get themselves back out there and, less isolation for everybody else. That's all.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I hope that was good practice for this upcoming final. We have to present that. For those of you that aren't don't know about the Georgetown program, we actually have one of our classes here is designed to kind of help and usher these interns into producing something in a way that they can communicate their findings. I'm trying to personally incorporate it into my dashboard, which is pretty cool. But I guess in the interest of what I found really interesting about that is the fact that I never thought of the merit of, we always talk about addressing some of these problems, but we never really talk about the issue of if people don't want the problem solved, which I think is something really unique to vaccinations and COVID. Michael, if you don't mind me asking, do you think, what do you see in the future from your research? Do you see us approaching the South Carolina state, especially, and then maybe you can talk on the rest of the United States as well. Do you see us approaching lesser numbers of people who aren't comfortable taking the vaccine? Or do you think that it's going to kind of stay consistent or increase even?
So I did an interview with Dr. Harmon on April 1st. And that was actually one of the questions I asked him on what his thoughts were, why people were so hesitant about the COVID vaccination. And he said that a lot of people are hesitant. It's called hesitancy towards vaccination because they either don't trust the vaccination or they've never gotten vaccinated before. So if parents don't get vaccinated, that's going to pass on to their generation of kids, to the next generation of kids. So eventually, if you grow up in that kind of state of not getting vaccinated, it kind of prevents you from, I guess, getting the antibodies you need to survive in society. And especially now with the pandemic, I mean, it's just, I feel like it's just going to get worse because, I mean, look at the climate change happening. I mean, you got fires in California that last for years. You got, earthquakes where there were never earthquakes, more hurricanes down here than they have ever had. So I think it's a good idea to get it, in my opinion. I mean, you could just definitely see by research that numbers have gone down, and even hospitalizations within the 7 days in a week, there's only been 6 cases of people hospitalized, but without serious symptoms. So it is definitely helping, and it is definitely something that people should, you know, think about getting and read up a little more about it.
I think it's so interesting how just cognitive biases can shape entire countries sometimes, especially in this, in terms of possibly lowering the rate of infection versus not wanting to take something due to a lack of trust or understanding of what it is that's happening. I just think that COVID itself has just highlighted a lot of interesting, I guess, flaws in the security network of a lot of different nations, and especially the things that South Carolina is immune to that. And I think he's well, at least coming from someone who thought, oh, you know, this will never happen, it's not a big deal in South Carolina. It's an interesting thing to see that with your research. Yes, it is. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Mike.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that, like, because the vaccination process happened so rapidly. So everyone's like, how did they make it so fast? Did they skip any steps through, you know, the CDC and all that? But the thing is that when I interviewed Dr. Harmon, he informed me that it was already on the shelf, but they just never had a pandemic to figure out what it was used for. So, I mean, it went through the whole process, but the government, the state, and like, you know, the United States and the president and stuff like pushed a lot of money into getting it like rapidly done with. So like, instead of waiting like a year or two, they just did it rapidly, but they hit every single phase on their way, but did it a lot quicker because they had the money to do it instead of not having the funding. That's why it takes so long to get vaccines made, because of the funding.
Sorry, big gust of wind there. Yeah, no, that's really interesting, Michael, for sure. I think that you have a very interesting term, like in terms of what you're researching. I think this is something that's going to be a prevalent issue for the next year and probably years to come. So thank you for that. I think if you don't mind, I'm going to move on to, I guess I'm going to talk about some of the adversities I've had in terms of collecting data and what COVID has essentially done to the process of trying to implement this, especially into a place like Georgetown County, where we're still a fledgling organization here. We're still trying to establish a nice foothold. So maybe I can talk to what it's like being a college student trying to implement all of these SDG goals to an entire town of people that doesn't really even know what it is yet. So one of the things that I had encountered that was really, I think, unique to COVID was the fact that I couldn't go into separate meetings with people. I couldn't really sit down in an environment and have an open discussion or dialogue. A lot of this would be taking place either over Zoom and or just over email communications. And especially with how pressed everyone is for time over Zoom, I can speak for myself at least. A lot of the instances in which I had several meetings that either were just completely canceled outright or rescheduled several times before I could even get a meeting to answer maybe 5% of the questions or issues that I had. And I think especially in terms of something like what I'm doing, which is a lot of data collection, it's really difficult when you can't get the data directly from the source, or even have a meeting in which you can plan and task what data you need and what needs to be collected. I guess the way that I've worked around this is more so along the lines of being very consistent, which is something that I haven't had to do in the past, especially towards like the beginning of this internship. And then as COVID has progressed, slowly but surely, more issues are rising up because of a lot of the other issues that are these underlying things brought up by COVID. For example, for one of the meetings I was supposed to have was talking about hazard mitigation as well as zoning and planning. So I wanted to look at some of the merits of flooding and how that could directly impact zoning and planning in Georgetown County. But the issue with that was that there was such a rush for zoning and planning that I didn't have an opportunity to speak with the person in charge of it. So I couldn't provide them that insight and say, hey, this is how we want to include, this is how Georgetown Rise at least wants to include our sustainability and development through the utilization of looking at some of the flood mapping all throughout Georgetown County, which would have maybe helped. But I think because of COVID, that opportunity didn't really present itself, nor was I able to do that, which is, again, frustrating. But I think that in the future, what I would encourage interns to do, such as yourself, Michael, and potentially Hannah, I would encourage you to, I guess, be consistent and really try to address these issues early, get a lot of planning done, And with COVID happening, I'm assuming that we're still not going to have in-person meetings for a long time. But I think we've all adjusted pretty well. The fact that we're all here, I think, speaks to our adaptability during COVID and our ability to communicate our findings, even though we're not having a typical conference, or this is not really the atypical setting that I'm sure all of us is used to in terms of being panelists. But I just wanted to see what were some of the difficulties that you all struggled with in terms of pre-COVID and post-COVID, and how did you deal with them?
Well, yeah, I think I think there's lots of different components to that, of course, but I think very much so the main challenge, a lot of the challenges that I've noticed, especially, for example, the UN is the international institution, very difficult for people for a COVID hotspot in a sense, in the sense that a lot of people are traveling there internationally. So a lot of the efforts there have, it's been a bit more challenging. But the Global Challenges Forum has done continued efforts. But one thing I've noticed is one thing that kind of continues to want me to continue moving forward and coordinating is the work that people like your organization are doing, taking the time to help, rise other interns and pass the torch, as you call it, and seeing kind of the work that, Angela's doing. So social entrepreneurship, I think a lot of times there's a sense of when the UN is kind of viewed as kind of like the UN delegates, kind of more of an international IR, but there's also the social entrepreneurship side that is very important, trying to do good and do well. And I think as long as you have that framework of trying to do good and do well, you can do. I mean, Avi Schiffman, who we coordinate with, he created the COVID-19 tracking site in December before it even hit the United States. At 17, he just, I don't know how he did it. He barely gets any sleep, but but he, I think there's definitely, if you have the right framework and mentality to do it, you definitely can. I think the efforts can compound on each other. I think the research that you're doing, when you pass that torch, it can continue to extend to other people and other work. And the work with Michael too, that you're doing, the local impact, like global to local. I remember coming back from Senegal, I was thinking, wow, like all the issues that I realized were over here, and how much issues are in my community, right? How many issues are in Atlanta while I'm in Morehouse, right? So I think there's no extent to what you can do to make an impact.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alexander. Yeah, something I guess you mentioned very briefly was that I thought was really interesting is the fact that you want to do good, but you necessarily you have to also communicate the fact that what you're doing is good. And I think, interestingly enough, we have to understand our community a little bit before we go into it. I think culturally and whatever other merits you want to attribute to that can speak a lot to whether or not something is going to be implemented properly, and if the community is going to be willing to accept it. Like I said, Georgetown is a very fledgling. This is a very fledgling program, and they're not necessarily as in tune with sustainability as typical. I would say the Atlanta area, I'm sure, is a little bit more informed about this. But Georgetown is very, I guess, new to this whole thing, and I find it interesting that not only are we going to have to do really important work, but we're also going to have to advertise it and almost have like a marketing team in order to get our point across so that it's implemented. Because if we just do good work and no one really knows about it or understands it, it's almost going to waste, which is a shame. But yeah, thank you for that.
Well, I hope you don't feel that way. I think all the people on this panel and the people in the maintaining the webinar have done an extreme amount of work, and I think that it's evident. So I think that the actions of it will speak for itself. I at least that's what I hope you take out of it, and I hope that you have a good graduation if you're on campus.
Yeah, thank you. We should be. So fingers crossed that it doesn't change. So I'm actually going to give Hannah an opportunity to speak here. One of the interesting things that we've had is that she's not a Georgetown Rise intern, but she has participated and we have an organization for the Intel majors called Chanticleer Intelligence Brief, which is this pre-professional organization in which it's modeled based off of the NSA in terms of there's different desks with different topics. And what Hannah focused on is with her food security, I think is really interesting. But on top of that, one of the programs that they had focused on in that organization was they created something called the COVID Intelligence Project, which essentially was addressing some sustainability goals while also not necessarily participating in Georgetown directly, but it definitely made it into conversation with us. So Hannah, would you mind kind of talking about that a little bit?
Of course, thank you. And hopefully Zoom stays for me, so I apologize for the issues earlier. But like Rick said, I am part of the Chanticleer Intelligence Brief. I'm an executive officer for that. And basically it is an estimative intelligence pre-professional organization for a lot of the Intel majors here at Coastal. And what we did was we repurposed CIB when COVID hit, because we knew we couldn't meet in person, and a lot of our briefs and a lot of our topics would be forever changed because of COVID. So what we did with the CIB is we repurposed it to create the CIB COVID Intelligence Project, which is an open source intelligence collective just projects whose goal is to develop descriptive and estimated analysis. A lot of it focusing on medical, social, economic, and political effects of COVID. So what I focused on was food security. I was our food security editor, and kind of relating it back to the UN a little bit, I focused on goal number 2, which is their zero hunger goal. But more in depth, it's about ending hunger, achieving food security, and improved nutrition, and promoting sustainable agriculture. So what I focused on mainly would be sustainable food security and how food security, food insecurity played a part into sustainability, because there are 4 main parts of how food security plays into sustainability. Some of those, to just give you like a brief background, would be availability of food and sufficient food production, access to food, sufficiency in terms of nutrition, including energy, proteins, micronutrients, as well as safety, and the stability and speech impediment, foreseeability of these conditions. And one of the big things that I also focused on would be threats to food security, including limited supplies of nutritious and safe foods when consumers' foods purchasing powers is limited. And one of the big things with this pandemic is a lot of people panicked. So a lot of things were bought up quickly, and jobs were lost, meaning more people had to rely on food banks, such as Feeding America, which is nationwide in the United States. But one of the issues Feeding America faced was because food products diminished, they did not have as many donations as they usually did. So the rising demand to access these food banks were met with lowering donations. So they did not have products to feed these families, as well as volunteers, as a lot of the volunteers are in the elder community, so it was unsafe for them to come and visit. But one of the big goals that I am still researching to this day is how COVID has affected the UN's Sustainability Development Goal of feeding 10 billion people by 2050. We know that number has definitely dropped at the moment because of COVID-19, and how COVID-19 is probably going to change the world as we know. I know COVID-19 is still going on, so we're still waiting to see what the foreseeable effects are going to be. But yes, that's what my research has been focused on.
Well, thank you for the elaboration. It sounds very, a lot of due diligence for sure. I think it's very important.
10 minutes left in our panel sessions. Okay. Yeah, just quick shout out to Hannah. I was really thoroughly impressed by this, considering that she wasn't even aware of the Georgetown Rise program and wasn't participating in it, but her organization essentially took on this big task and unintentionally implemented sustainability into it, which I think is fascinating. And then also with her, conversing with her now with Georgetown Rise and the RCEs and getting her acclimated with this, I would really hope that in the future that organizations across our campus could even implement these sort of things, whether it's philanthropy organizations within our Greek life, or if it's, again, Intel community simulations that are essentially combating COVID through what they don't even know is sustainability. Yeah, hopefully in the future we can see a lot more implementation of that. And I would really hope that Georgetown Rise itself as a program really jumps on that opportunity. I think, and maybe the RCE Atlanta could do the same as well. But it looks like you guys have definitely had a lot of different organizational participation, which is definitely commendable. So we don't have too much time left, but what I will ask is, I guess, to kind of wrap things up, speaking again to all the projects that you're researching, what exactly do you see, what are your goals in terms of moving forward to make sure that all of your research is being implemented as effectively as possible in the middle of this COVID pandemic?
I mean, first and foremost, I think still keep the restrictions in the order, make sure you're 6 feet apart from people. Not saying like you can't hang out in small groups, but just kind of keep it low key for now until they start figuring out more and more on if more and more people are going to get vaccinated or what, because now that Johnson & Johnson just had a recall on their vaccination, now it's only down to Moderna and Pfizer now. So I think a lot more people are getting nervous now because of Johnson & Johnson's recall. But on the other hand, if they want to think about the future and get the economy back to where it was, then people need to start bettering themselves and doing something for others to start getting the unemployment rate back up to where people could, live freely again.
Anjali, do you mind if I ask you specifically on that as well? Specifically with your agricultural work, how did COVID-19 affect the kind of the elements of trying to do sustainable agriculture with your efforts on that?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Alexander. Thank you for bringing that point up. So we had 2 agricultural-based companies. One of them was called Cultivo. That one was based in Chicago. So what ended up happening was that team just worked primarily on Zoom. It was not anything, they didn't have to do any physical labor. They kind of put together a policy handbook that was kind of emphasized the B Corporation guidelines and that kind of metrics guide. But the other one called R&R Secret Farm, which is a local farm in Athens, we actually had socially distanced work days. So the team used to come to the farm, take measurements, see where solar panels could be implemented, where low flow filters could be implemented, things like that. Actually, I came on hands-on, touched the items very hands-on, but it was socially distanced. Everyone wore masks. It was rather a large farm. People came at their own kind of restriction and kind of followed through a path that was guidelined out. But the rest of the project was just like the other one where they had to work with the company and work with the owners of the farm over Zoom. So there was kind of a 2 pieces in that, but the work that was hands-on was not really required of the students. I think that was just something that they wanted to do based on the project itself. They could have just asked for measurements easily or just asked for photos, but they chose voluntarily because those 6 students were comfortable. And I think near the end of the project, they'd all been vaccinated. So as they were comfortable, they started transitioning to go do some hands-on work. So I hope that answered the question.
That did. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. In the interest of time, is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you guys would like to bring up in the last? I think we have about 5 minutes left before we're going back into the main room.
No, I just want to say that I think you all did an amazing job with your presentations, and I was very impressed with each and every one of you. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to send you my email, and I would love to have your presentations because I know that we're going to have this recording, but I know my supervisor would love to look over them. And I just think you did an amazing job. And I know I'm impressed with my undergrads that I teach now, and all of you I'm impressed with. So I think it's great and you should be very proud of yourselves. And this is here, you can just send it to my coastal and you can take note, and if you don't mind forwarding that to me, that'd be amazing. Thank you. Always good to network. If I could tell you guys anything, starting now, network, keep your connections. Always good.
Yeah, that being said, I'm actually going to put my email down here as well. If you would like to reach out to me, I'm still kind of trying to look for the next replacement for me that I'm passing that torch to. And I think both of you, or all of you rather, have had some really interesting research. And if you wouldn't mind, I would love to put you in contact with the next intern. And hopefully they can find some common ground or something that we could represent in both cases, that, you know, kind of a give and take relationship, which would be fantastic. Because I'm at a loss for words for how impressed I am with what it is you guys are doing. So let's throw that in the chat right now.
Yeah, that was awesome. Any last minute things? If not, we could all have like a 1-minute break and then go back into the main room or something. Up to you guys.
Have a nice long deep breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed hearing about all of this. I think like it's super inspiring just to hear like a different, different takes on what it means to be like developing community sustainably. Sometimes I only think of like the projects that I've been exposed to at UGA. So
Yeah,
thanks for having me
for
today.
sure. I think that's awesome. This is something I did a long time ago, but I just want to share with you guys. Think of other, if you love staying in this type of, sustainability, and this is your passion. I worked out of grad school in South Africa for the Groupos Foundation, and I was in the sports management area, but they had all different types of sustainability, like subdivisions of there, and it's in Hansby, and they are constantly looking for interns. I know with COVID right now, it might be a little bit like weird, but you can do like a 3 or 4 month one, a summer one, and just gain so much from it. And it was like the best experience. That was in 2015, and I still have taken that with me in so many ways in my other jobs too. I also have a sustainability business, health and wellness. It's Arbonne, and all of our packaging is 100% recyclable. And, with COVID going on, everything's, there's so many great positive changes. And that's something else that I really liked. Even though my first passion is health and physical education. So I was a teacher for a while, but I just wanted to share that with you guys. Some other ways that you can, look at this, not just in your universities.
100. Thank you for that. I just want to say it was really interesting listening to everybody, especially a lot of you guys coming from groups and like big organizations with a lot of your research, and a lot of my research just kind of being personal. So it was really cool seeing the collaboration, and I really look forward to hopefully being able to make my research more collaborative with a bigger organization with food security. So thank you guys so much for letting me listen along.
Awesome. Tiago sent a message that he's bringing us all back in at 3:50 sharp. So if you need a break, go take a quick break, but we'll only have 10 more minutes anyway. Good job, Derek, running the group.
Did my best.
Good job. Well, I guess I'll see you guys in the main room in a minute.